Hey everybody, Kat here. Welcome to the channel. Hope you're having a great day. It's Sunday, and wow, we've got a lot to look at today. As I've always said, things are never what they seem. So we constantly have to decode what the mainstream media says, what the government says, what the king says. What's going on? And we have all kinds of those questions, especially around Prince Harry. How the heck is he getting away with what he's getting away? From his visa to these charities that he's just rent asunder. In a matter of a decade, he's wrecked too, and Invictus isn't far behind. His involvement with what seems like government policy, interfering in Ukraine, spreading his grift worldwide, the latest Australia trip that was infuriating as it was embarrassing for everybody. How's this happening? Well, I have said before that Harry and Meghan are both useful idiots, caught up as pawns in a big game of risk. That's right, the elites have started eating each other. I've talked about this a lot. If you follow me, you understand. We've had so much controversy the last few days trying to figure out what's really going on. Harry pops up in Ukraine. Then the king has his visit in America. Seems like a lot of cross paths. And why is Harry being allowed to do this on the eve of the king's major visit, when things between Britain and the UK are in such bad shape right now anyway? None of it makes sense. Well, you have to look kind of behind the scenes. First, just looking at Harry's visit to Ukraine, this is the third time he's gone there. Each time sort of under the guise of it's an Invictus fishing expedition, setting up things for Invictus, creating excitement about Invictus. Looking for his next grift is more like it, but especially now, especially in a time of war, Harry just popping up in Ukraine? How does this happen? Well, we know now that Yvette Cooper, Britain's Home Secretary, she approved the trip to the Ukraine by Harry. She signed off on it. Britain's Labour government knew about it. And as such, when those things cross one's desk, the king is always made aware of it. So the king knew also, because they get those briefings. The king knew of Harry's upcoming visit to Ukraine. Which is interesting, because if he didn't approve of it or he thought it was going to be a problem, he could have put a stop to it. Harry being, here he is. He's a private individual. Well, he's also using his royal titles He's in communication with the British government. That's not a private trip. That isn't. And I mean, I've said all along that Harry's been quietly supported by not only the palace, but the British government, and there's cross reasons for that too. I mean, the double cross is deep and wide, and we've talked about it before, and this is just what's going on now geopolitically with the king and the royal family and Trump. It's part of a much wider story. We know that the British Labour government is not a big fan of the royal family, and so perhaps if an action was going to be negative toward the royal family, normally a government, the king's government, we're going to suppress that or sideline that or whatever. The Labour government doesn't care if something puts the royals in a bad light, because they don't like them anyway. In fact, you could say they are in active opposition to the monarchy. And at the time, and right now, the royal family and this whole thing can be used as a distraction completely. Because look at Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of Britain. His approval rating is lower than low. He's a scumbag. He's been caught up in scandal after scandal. Right now, the Rent Boy trial is going on. If you don't know about that, maybe take a look. Starmer is not a monarchist, nor is he supportive of them. So that gives you some kind of background as to why they would be cooperating and propping up Harry, even at the detriment of the royal family. That's just one thing. You've got the king goes to America on a state visit, and people on both sides of the fence have widely varying views and opinions on the strategy behind it, what really happened, and who actually benefited. You know, that's one for the conspiracy theorists, I tell you. You know, when the king spoke in front of the Houses of Congress, the joint Houses of Congress, what was the highlight of his speech? Climate change, Ukraine, and the ever-present threat of Russia. Now, Ukraine has always been, and especially now, a cash cow for the elites, a cash cow for the deep state. It is a hub of action for the deep state. We've had really good examples of this, even though nothing's really come of it yet, but the whole Burisma oil and Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and their businesses in Ukraine. Complete grift. They made millions off Burisma. You know all about Hunter Biden and his laptop and Russian collusion and all the made-up things that they have tried to use to obfuscate what really has been going on in Ukraine. Now, about Harry's trip. So Yvette Cooper, she knew about it. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, would have known about it. They informed the king. Now, Sources are saying that William was left in the dark about all of this. The king didn't tell William that Harry was headed for Ukraine. With government and palace support, nonetheless. William is left in the dark. That further confirms what I've been saying about a rift between the king and William. And what I think eventually is going to happen. I think William's going to push. Well, I think at William's urging, the weight of the scandals on his shoulders will push Charles out of his throne. I've been saying this for a long time in my playlist, King Charles III, Life Imitating Art. This is just another example of the rift. So the government knows all about the interference and the problems that Harry's going to cause when he goes to Ukraine, but they let it happen anyway, and they send the king to America. In the midst of all the Middle East war, the fact that Britain refused to cooperate with Trump in the military effort, absolutely undermining Trump in every way, they send the king to America. They're leaning on the king for that soft power smoothing over. They're leaning on the king and undermining him at the same time. The government of the day has always leaned on the monarchy for support of the regime. But this time, things are different. The government isn't supportive of the monarchy. We've determined that. So it's something causes them a problem. The monarchy, that is. Oh, well. So much the better. Harry can't do anything. He can't accomplish anything. He's not a government minister. He's not an ambassador of any sort. He's not a politician. He's not a strategist. He can't accomplish anything for the monarchy or the government. He has no diplomatic experience at all. He can really do now is grift for Invictus. And that's not going well. Invictus is in big trouble. He's just destroyed same with Meghan, everything they get involved with. Harry's, African part, Centibelli, he's destroyed everything. Imagine Harry in Ukraine. He rebukes both Putin and Trump as if he understands what's really going on. Most people don't understand what's really going on, and we're going to get into it. And Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, she approved his visit without any oversight at all, sending Harry to Ukraine. That is, what it reminds me of? You got to go back a couple of decades. It's akin to when Dennis Rodman made visits to North Korea, Kim Jong-un, between 2013 and 2017. Or 2017. Under the guise of promoting the Globetrotters and opening up North Korea for... Please. And you got, in 2009, the American Democratic government sent Sean Penn, of all people, to Cuba, supposedly to interview Castro for The Nation magazine. Of course, we know it's all intelligence-based. They're using them. And the problem is people like Sean Penn thinks he's a real statesman now, and in the midst of any given interview, he'll bleat on about his lefty politics as if he knows, he's a geopolitical expert. This is what happens. And I mean, this whole thing. Normal Americans need special permission to travel to these places. Cuba, North Korea, Ukraine included. Same in Britain. Harry would have needed a special travel visa to go to Ukraine. And this is his third trip there. But this is what it is. Harry's been reduced to a globe-trotting git, doing his handler's bidding, while pimping out his own purposes wherever he goes, right? He's left looking foolish and out of his depth completely. And I mean, this is not only damaging to Harry, it's very damaging to the royal family. But to the deep state, that doesn't matter, because they're, when you get to the top of the elites, they're all fighting each other for power and relevancy. I've talked about this many times before, and I mean, this kind of stuff goes back to First World War, 1917, the Balfour Declaration, originally to establish a home for Jewish people in Palestine. The British government aimed to secure control over Palestine. Like I said, it's all about control. So you look at who controlled Ukraine before Russia did. Now, Ukraine became independent in 1991 after the fall of the Soviet Union. And it was immediately hijacked by the elites. Once the breadbasket of Northern Europe, Ukraine became a corridor of corruption for the elitists, commies. Everybody, especially the American Democrats, understood this. This European corridor provided movement of money, laundering, resources, and people. Yeah. Traffic. A playground to be looted and exploited by the elites. The deep government, the nouveau Nazis, are actually running the show in Ukraine. That's why Russia wants to stop them. Putin also understands the grift, and it's the same people that slapped together the Russian collusion hoax, None of that was real. And the main guy that put that all together, British government, you betcha, right in the middle of it all. It all goes back to the British government and the U.S. deep state. The Black Ops, the kind of stuff Trump is trying to eliminate. She's got Britain, the Democrats, Canada. They're all working to protect and promote and finally prop it up. The Ukrainian grift, that's right. Keep in mind, if Trump is successful and the corruption ceases, it all comes out. It all comes out. Trump is fighting the deep state. Liz Truss calls it the blob. Ukraine was set up to be looted, like Haiti. There's a rabbit hole. There's a rabbit hole for you. Research what the Clintons did to Haiti. Still going on. Did you know? Zelensky was never a passionate politician or even citizen that wanted to fix his country. He was a comedian, an actor. He actually did a film about a comedian coming president. He's playing a role. He's the public face of the global grift. He's cashing in big time personally, too. You can bet on that. Since February of 22 to early 2026, the UK has sent $12.8 billion to Ukraine, and that continues. The United States sent $188 billion. Trump has finally put a stop to that now. Up to now, Europe has spent $200 billion. Canada has sent $25.5 billion. Here's a hard truth for you. Trump and Putin both understand the deep state operation, and that's why Putin invaded Ukraine in the first place. I'm not saying Putin's a good guy, just that he's trying to stop the deep state, as Trump is, trying to dismantle the corruption. That's why Trump derangement syndrome is so prevalent and pushed so hard. Canada's government so anti-Trump, really trying to break that relationship we've always had with America and pivoting to China. The UK is doing the same thing, their government, dismantling relations with the US. It's all a predetermined plan, guys. I've been talking about this for a long time. And they always need a fall guy. Putin's the bad guy. He's always the bad guy. This is really what the King's Commonwealth is fighting. And the European Union is fighting for, to keep the deep state in place untouched. Because if ever exposed, the EU, the Commonwealth, and the monarchy, you'll be totally exposed. So, of course, the King and the UK government and the deep state are allowing and facilitating Harry's visits here and there because he's disruptive. That's the point. Chaos all the time. Think about it. It keeps us distracted. So we don't see the real point. The global grift amid all the chaos. Ukraine is key to dismantling the deep state globally and the world. This puts Trump in direct opposition to the king. That was the point of the king's speech to the joint houses of Congress, reaffirming support for Ukraine. The urgency for climate change, another huge global grift that the deep state is running that Trump has pulled out of. And of course, the ever-present Russian threat. You always have to have a boogeyman. That's why the lefty Democrats in the House gave him a standing ovation. The UK press, they're claiming that the king's visit to the US was a victory. He really showed Trump who's who and what's what. The Trump camp is claiming victory too. Who bested who? Right now, it doesn't really matter. What's important is the message from Britain. Ukraine, climate change, Russia, direct opposition to Trump. The deep state is fighting for survival. The failing UK Labour government is fighting for survival. The monarchy under Charles is fighting for survival. The chaos Harry and Meghan cause wherever they go is a welcome distraction to keep us focused and emotionally invested and charged with anger with them, not at the people we should really be upset with. Instead, keeps us from looking at what's really going on. That's where our focus needs to be. It's in the big game of risk. I've talked about it before. And Harry and Meghan, they're being used as ammunition. Hope you enjoyed this. Like, subscribe, leave me a comment. If you like what you see and want to give me a tip, you can on Ko-fi. The link is in the description. Have a great day, everybody. See you next time. Bye for now.